I still remember the sound of the elevator that morning, a soft, perfect chime that didn't belong to people like us. The top floor of Silverline Tower smelled like money, orchids, glass polish, and the faint bite of disinfectant that tried too hard to hide the fear underneath. My mother, Elena Ruiz, walked 2 steps ahead, her black shoes squeaking against the marble. She was the head maid, which meant she cleaned the offices of billionaires instead of regular people. Her hands were cracked from bleach, her back bent from years of temporary work that somehow never ended. I shouldn't have been there. It was her day off, but the billionaire staff had urgent protocol failures before meeting. She had no one to watch me, so she brought me along. I was 13 and old enough, she said, to keep quiet and stay invisible. But it's hard to stay invisible when your reflection is caught in walls made of glass. When we stepped into Leonard Mercer's office, the one that seemed to float above New York City, I could feel how every surface demanded silence. The gold-veined marble, the glass walls showing a skyline that looked too sharp to be real. This was where the powerful made decisions that made the rest of us small. "Stay out of the way," my mother whispered, clutching her cleaning kit. "And don't speak, Lila. Not one word." I nodded. I meant to obey. But fate doesn't care much about obedience. I stayed by the edge of the room, near a table stacked with silver trays. The men in suits laughed too loudly, that hollow kind of laughter that fills a room when everyone's pretending to be important. My mother poured tea in silence, head bowed. I could see her hands shaking just a little as she placed the delicate cups down, careful not to spill. Every drop, every sound mattered here. Leonard Mercer, the billionaire himself, stood by the window, talking to a tall man I didn't recognize. His reflection hovered over the skyline like some kind of ghost. The man beside him, his assistant Bryce, whispered something and Leonard smirked. "Good," he said. "Make sure the Japanese version's locked. No one here can read it anyway. It's theater." They both chuckled. I didn't understand much about contracts or mergers, but something about the way he said theater made my stomach twist, like he was proud of lying. A few minutes later, I brought over an empty tray and set it near the glossy table where the documents lay open, 2 versions side by side, one in English, one in Japanese. I froze. The Japanese text. It wasn't unfamiliar. My grandfather, Samuel Ruiz, had been a translator after the war. He taught me the language when I was little, and I kept learning from his old books. It had always been our secret, something we shared when the world around us didn't have time for stories or history. And now those symbols on the page, I could read them. Not all, but enough. The words didn't match. The English line said, "Both companies will retain shared assets in case of market fluctuation." But the Japanese said, "All Mori Group assets will transfer under Mercer global control upon market instability." My heart hammered. My palms went cold. Before I could speak, Bryce barked, "Hey kid, don't touch the paperwork." His voice cracked like a whip. Everyone laughed, quick, cruel laughter that filled my ears like static. My mother's face turned pale. "I'm sorry, sir," she whispered. She didn't mean, but I couldn't hear the rest. The elevator dinged behind us, a soft sound that sliced the air. Mr. Takashi Mori had arrived. The air changed when he stepped in. The Japanese delegation moved like water, quiet, composed, deliberate. Their shoes barely made a sound on the marble. Mr. Mori bowed slightly, his expression unreadable. Behind him came his interpreter and 2 assistants, each carrying folders embossed with his company's crest. Leonard Mercer crossed the room with a grin that looked rehearsed. "Mr. Mori, welcome to the future of global innovation." The 2 men shook hands, cameras flashed, polite laughter filled the space. My mother stood near the wall, holding her tray like it could shield her from whatever came next. The meeting began. Small talk, compliments, a few practice jokes that no one really found funny. Then, the documents were placed on the glass table. English on the left, Japanese on the right. Leonard leaned forward. "Let's make history," he said. Mr. Mori nodded once. His eyes scanned the pages, calm and methodical. His hand hovered over the pen. My throat tightened. I looked at my mother. She was staring at the floor. And then I heard my own voice before I even realized I'd spoken. "That's not what it says." The room went dead still. Leonard turned, eyebrows raised. "Excuse me." My mother's whisper cut through the silence. "Lila, no." But it was too late. "The Japanese version," I said, my voice shaking but steady enough to be heard. "It says your company will take full control of Mr. Mori's assets. It's not the same as the English version." For a second, no one breathed. Then Bryce laughed, forced, high-pitched. "Goo." She probably learned a few words from anime or something. Laughter flickered again, weaker this time. Leonard's smile thinned. "Get her out," he snapped. But before my mother could move, Mr. Mori raised his hand. "Wait," he said softly. The interpreter hesitated. Mr. Mori spoke something in Japanese, low and precise. I answered him without thinking. My accent wasn't perfect, but my meaning was clear. A murmur rippled across the room. The interpreter's face went pale. Mr. Mori gestured for him to translate. "She says she's sorry for interrupting," the interpreter said quietly. "But the words are wrong. She says your contract hides theft." You could have heard a pin drop. Leonard's face turned red. "That's absurd," he barked. "She's a child. She doesn't know what she's saying." But no one laughed this time. The Japanese delegation whispered among themselves, flipping pages, pointing quietly. Their eyes moved quickly between the two versions of the contract, English and Japanese. Then one of them looked up, frowning. He said something to Mr. Mori in a sharp tone. I couldn't understand every word, but I caught the phrase deliberate alteration. Mr. Mori's calm began to crack, not in anger, but in disappointment. His voice, when it came, was soft as falling paper. "Mr. Mercer," he said through the interpreter, "who prepared this translation?" Leonard's assistant, Bryce, stammered. Our legal department. We outsourced the..." Before he could finish, the interpreter, the one who had been standing quietly by Mr. Mori's side, suddenly dropped his gaze. His hands trembled. Mr. Mori turned to him. "Is it true?" he asked. The man's lip quivered. "Yes," he whispered. "He paid me." His voice cracked. He said it would just make the deal more efficient. Gasps erupted across the room. One of Mr. Mori's aides raised a phone. He had been recording the meeting since the beginning. Every word, every lie. Leonard lunged forward, wild-eyed. "You liar! You little..." Mr. Mori rose, calm but sharp as a blade. "No, Mr. Mercer," he said. "You are the liar." Security moved toward him instinctively, but he held up a hand. "Do not," he said. "It is finished." And then, to my shock, he turned to me. "Who taught you Japanese?" he asked gently. My throat tightened. "My grandfather," I said. "Samuel Ruiz. He was a translator after the war. He told me, Japanese is the language of honor." Something flickered behind Mr. Mori's eyes, a light of memory, old and deep. "Your grandfather," he said slowly. "Samuel Ruiz?" I nodded. "Yes, sir." He reached into his pocket and took out his wallet. From it, he pulled a small, worn photograph. The edges yellowed, the corners creased from years of being carried. He laid it on the table. I stepped closer, heart pounding. Two young soldiers stared up from the picture, one Japanese, one American, sitting side by side in a field, their uniforms dusty, their smiles real. And on the American soldier's uniform patch, just visible beneath the crease, were the stitched letters, S. Ruiz. My breath caught. "That's him," I whispered. "That's my grandfather." Mr. Mori exhaled slowly. For the first time, his composure cracked. Not from anger, but from something like reverence. Your grandfather saved mine, he said softly. Hiroshi Mori, in Okinawa. He was shot. Your grandfather carried him to safety. He said he owed his life to Samuel Ruiz. The room was silent. Even the city outside, that endless hum of traffic and power, seemed to fade away. Leonard Mercer stood frozen, pale as marble. The interpreter was crying, and my mother, my brave, quiet mother, covered her mouth, tears spilling down her cheeks. Mr. Mori turned to me again. Honor, he said, does speak in every language. He bowed deeply to me, to my mother, and to the name of the man who had once saved his family. At that moment, I understood why my grandfather had always said kindness was a form of courage. Because sometimes it changes everything, even decades later in a room made of glass. The deal collapsed that same afternoon. The story didn't. By the next morning, Leonard Mercer's name was on every news outlet in New York. Fraudulent translation, attempted corporate theft, insider manipulation. His empire cracked from the inside out, stock prices plummeting, investors vanishing like smoke. My mother and I watched it unfold on a small television in our kitchen, the same one that flickered through soap operas and weather reports. She kept shaking her head, whispering, Dios mío, Dios mío. But I just sat there quiet, because in the middle of all that chaos, something bigger had been rebuilt. That afternoon, a black car stopped in front of our apartment building. Out stepped Mr. Mori himself, flanked by two aides in tailored suits. He bowed to my mother in the narrow hallway, the smell of bleach and laundry soap hanging in the air. Elena Ruiz, he said, you raised a daughter of courage. He handed her an envelope. Inside, a full scholarship letter embossed in gold. Tuition, housing, books, everything. He said it was from the Mori Ruiz Foundation for Ethical Business, a program he was launching in honor of two men who once refused to be enemies, and one young girl who spoke when silence would have been safer. My mother tried to speak, but her voice broke. He only bowed again and said softly, Honor must continue its work. Months later, I sat at a cherrywood desk in Tokyo, the air outside alive with the scent of cherry blossoms. The city glowed beneath me, ancient and electric all at once. I was studying international law now, learning how to see the invisible lines that powerful people try to write between truth and profit. Every case, every document I read, reminded me of that morning in Silverline Tower, and the moment I learned that truth can sound small but still shake skyscrapers. I opened my notebook, writing my first essay in both English and Japanese. My grandfather once said honor speaks in every language. Today, I know that one sentence, spoken at the right time, can rewrite history. I closed the notebook and looked out the window. The city lights shimmered like 1,000 silent promises. And in the reflection of the glass, just for a moment, I thought I saw him. My grandfather, smiling softly like he'd been there all along.